Welcome to another episode of Breakthrough, a Dale Carnegie podcast. And Faith and I are delighted to have our guests, really privileged to have our guests here. We have Tony Zhang and Moshuan Zhu. And really why it's important for them to be part of this podcast is we know that money matters. You know, one of my favorite quotes from Zig Ziglar is, money is not everything, but it ranks up there with oxygen. So it's really important that we manage it well. And we don't want it to control us. We certainly want to be able to control our money. So I'm really looking forward to really talking through why this is important and how we can get tips, advice, and maybe just learn about its importance for all of us here. So I guess, Tony, I want to ask you the first question, if I may,
Sure.
and maybe just to get us going, just introduce yourself and what it is you're trying to achieve, and then Moshuan, the same for you, right? And then we'll get into our questions, if that's okay. So just tell us a bit about yourselves. Tony, please be first.
Perfect. Thank you. This is also an honor and privilege to talk with you. I think the first day we met, that big name of Dale Carnegie resonates a lot. What I've gone through in terms of developing myself and also getting into a business. The quote you just introduced ahead of the conversation reminds me that there's something important, but we can't chase after it. This goes back to what is the approach, what is our understanding. And as an engineer, I was never satisfied with something my mentor or my coaches taught me how to do good in business, where using software engineering to help corporations to do a better job. A more common way to tell is how do we help business makes more money? So I was rather I wouldn't say successful, but I kind of get to a place where I don't have to worry about losing my job. I don't have to worry about, is there a project I can take over as an owner for myself? I started a company back in my 38, 37-ish, and I was doing project, but I don't find that driver anymore when I've been in the business for 20 years. So my next question is, if I were able to get where I am, how can I help other people, especially younger people, which I'm pretty sure is your audience or listening to this podcast? How can they be having those seeds in their mind? Where am I going? What are the challenges I'm facing? Is there a way for me to digest what is ahead of me to prepare better, not to have a smooth ride, but to be less fearful or more tolerance of uncertainty and also the failure. So that's part of the reason we started an organization called Apex Learn, where we believe as Gen Z or as their parents, as ourselves as Gen X and Gen Y, we also going through continuous learning process. I don't know what's ahead of me, but I'm really, really excited to work with whoever is on our journey to either be partner with or learn from each other.
Nice, I like it. Go ahead, Mo, over to you.
Sure. Hey, everybody. My name is Moshuan Zhu. Originally, I came to the United States in 2008 for my master's degree in mechanical engineer. And soon after graduation, I started working for a startup and then moved on to a bigger company. But the problem is, working as an engineer for the first day since, I can sense that how would I be like in my 60s? It's a really tough feeling to have when you can see your 60s when you were 20s. And actually, as soon as we're out of the school, I realized that my cognitive level or learning curve start to go plateau. And that's a bad feeling. So that's why I've been looking for opportunities to grow myself again. Actually, organizations like Dale Carnegie has been doing a lot of work trying to re-educate people going back to learning, right? And that's actually what I've been looking to. And fortunately, I came across Tony, my business partner, and through his journey, I realized that I can restart my learning process. And that's how I started the Apex Learn platform with Tony together. And through Apex Learn, actually, we are trying to reignite people's learning, not only on personal finance, but also on other aspects of psychology, philosophy, parenting, etc. But like Neville said, the personal finance part of it is actually so critical. But in the meantime, it's not taught in school. I talked to a lot of teenagers. They are still in their junior high or high school. I asked them, did you ever have this kind of courses? They said, well, no, not systematically. There are probably some mentions here and there, but no. And I asked them, would you like to sign up for this kind of a lesson? If there is an opportunity for you to enroll, they said, oh yeah, definitely. But there's no people who's volunteering or spending their time really to educate them. So I think that's where we want to really solve the problem.
Well, let's focus on maybe what part of the problem maybe might be, and maybe that's where you can, and again, either one of you could answer the question, I guess, but you were saying, Tony, earlier, it's where do I go to? What is life like? Can I be less fearful in that process? And when it comes to planning for the future, wanting to buy a home, buying a car, what are some of the fears that you're seeing or the concerns that you're seeing young people are having when it comes to starting out in their careers? They're earning this money for the first time. The banks are, throwing loans and credit cards at them. And what are some of the advice that maybe you could share about these young adults starting their businesses, got their master's degrees, and now all of a sudden have to manage these credit cards and short-term debt that they have?
Right. So I'll share my perspective and Emotion tell his story. And we are actually 10 years apart. That's one of the benefits. We're partnering with people who has different experience. Goes back to the question where I think a lot of younger people, their experience with money has a lot to do with their past experience, inherited from their parents, or what they heard over on the internet from their teacher. So they have not get a chance to learn how the psychology and neuroscience behind those monetary decisions where they're going to make. So you can't really be an intelligent investor if you were only read stuff on internet, getting advertising from the bank. Some are fear-driven, allow you to make quick decisions to satisfy the immediate gratification. And some are trying to filter out their candidates so that they have better customer. So the market isn't training people to better use their intelligence and the money towards their advantage. So the planning horizon is so long that people really don't have enough time to educate people on. So that's one of the reasons, instead of giving them advice right away, I would hear them to say that, why do they fear this way? Is it because of what they have been going through? Or is it because of something they have heard over somebody else, which they believe it might be correct? So my advice to them is try to get some education how neuroscience works when you trying to make a financial decision. Is there fear-driven or greed-driven? And then we'll figure out how we can help you to set up a foundation for you to make a decision that really in the benefit of yourself.
Faith in neuroscience about fears of making money decisions. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't often think about that when I go to the bank about, am I making decisions cognitively out of fear or is it desire? So I find it really interesting. Mo, you want to share some insights or your thoughts? What could you add to that? I have another question possibly, but Faith, I don't. Sure. If you have another, please jump in. Go for it.
Actually, speaking of fears, I think a lot of the fears, actually, when I was a young professional, a lot of the fears actually come from the uncertainty. The uncertainty of, okay, if I make this decision, would I go into a wrong route? If I make a different decision, would I be better off? So the decision-making process actually is bothering the young professionals. Sometimes I call it perfect, trying to achieve a perfect scenario. Actually, more than often, the consequence is more severe if we don't do anything. Actually, I encourage young people to actually find a route, get a plan, find a route, and then go with it. Fail, but fail fast, and fail with some experiment that they can leverage down the road. I think that's one of the things that I've learned over the years.
I love that idea. Go ahead, Tony.
I can completely agree with what Mo just said. Well, instead of pondering on the decisions for too long, don't take action. You may end up become one of those investors or decision makers in the middle age or even after having a family, regret about something you haven't done. So while you were young, even you might fail, but fail fast, and then you can always recover from that.
Yes, it is so important to have awareness of what we're thinking and that psychological component to not just finances, but everything. When it comes to the philosophy that you guys have shaped this around, can you talk about that element of it too?
Yeah. So one of the better illustrated way I have seen in recent days, I use that in my training material, is imagine the financial future is a tree. And the tree, we know that has a huge root. The root is as big as the tree on the top, above the earth level. So there's a tree trunk, and there's branches, and there's leaves. So most people, when they come to financial advice, they were talking about the leaves. They're basically waving the leaves. They heard or they got from somebody else, say, is this good? Is this a good strategy? Is this good tactical way to doing things? Should I buy this? Is this cheap enough? Something like that. But where the financial healthy of the individualized supposed to be holistic view, starting from the root, which what is your value system? Do you value your family over your personal achievement? Their values are in conflict, but if you don't figure that out at the root level, it's not going to be healthy along the way when you grow up. So, and then go to the trunk level is your life principles, your life philosophies, what kind of life you're trying to live, reflecting the value you honored. And then go to the branches, that's where the financial strategy is going to play. You may have education strategy, you may want to borrow, you may want to go to cheaper school, and those strategies are supposed to align with your life goal you're trying to achieve. And then finally is the leaves, which is a product you purchase, or tactical solutions. What's the short-term plan in the next 3 years, stuff like that. So that's, to me, is a overall financial strategy that everybody should be starting from the bottom up instead of just go with the fancy thing, what has been talked about on internet recent days.
Yeah, I think that internet conversation is a challenging one, right? Because there's this fad and people try and follow a trend. I see you nodding on that. Mo, do you want to just comment or share? How do we avoid ourselves getting trapped in a fad or a trend that could actually cost us more money? Marshawn, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I can agree with more with Tony on the part that we need to first understand ourselves, understand our values. Actually, we started to introduce game into the daily routines with our business. When we first see someone who's consulting with us, who's coaching with us, actually we would have a dash of value cards with them so that they can select the values. And they narrow it from 50 cards to 15 to 10, and then the 5 cards. The 5 cards are the core values of these people. So when we are making decisions, if we can pause for just a second and thinking, okay, what part of it is satisfying my values? Is it aligned with my core values? If it does not, maybe I should rethink whether I should be doing this. Because if that's not something that I value, then I might as well not putting my focus, my attention to it. Nowadays, money is important, but actually more important for us is the attention. Tony and I have a talk about it, is that the attention is also a currency. We call it an attention currency. Actually, the thing that we focus on grows, right? If we focus on playing, our capability of playing actually grow. If we focus on study, the capability of studying grow. So that's another aspect, is how do we actually accumulate or start to build some like a micro or atomic habits. That's also crucial, because to start a habit of, okay, reading, for example, is hard. If I want to read an hour a day, that's really hard. But actually, if we can start with maybe open up the book today, or just put on our shoes before today to achieve my exercise goal, that's actually gradually, it becomes more natural and can drive us away from all the TikToks or internet or trends that we want to have gain our individualism, or also our critical thinking back.
Well, Sean, I love how you're talking about those atomic habits and the small steps that we can take to get to where we want to be. A lot of times people look at it as this huge mountain they have to climb in order to start doing this habit, but really just taking that first step and not looking at the big picture, but just saying, how can I start moving at least today and not just stand still? When it comes to Gen Z, we know that they love TikTok and Instagram and all those things. How would you recommend high school or college students that are listening to this be able to put down the TikTok and focus their attention on something other than social media? Do you have any advice for that? I'm just curious.
Moshe, you want to try first?
Sure. Actually, I was just talking to a parent who has teenager kids the other day, and he agrees that the Instagram, the TikTok has just take so many time. And one of the conversations that I carried on, what if us parents start to take them out into the nature? What if we go into like a national parks and be there for a couple of days, so we have full access to the nature instead of through the phone? There's no signals there. You can't do anything with your phone, pretty much, right? So, and also in that process, you can start engaging with them, and they can feel the beauty. Once they feel the beauty of the nature, actually, the time used, the usage on the phone actually becomes less. Tony, you want to add something?
Yeah, when Faith commented earlier on that people may have big plans, but when you start engaged to it, there's distraction, there's a frustration, and how do we move ahead? There's a lot of things that either physical limitation or economic limitation that may be inherited from the environment. And I think that's where the Carnegie concept really can play a huge role in those youngsters' mind, where we emphasize on how do we be kind to people and then develop the positive from, or discover the positive from that person, and use that as a starting point to encourage them to do baby steps. And once they achieve those baby steps, if we create an environment, either their fellow classmates or friends or the parents, hopefully they're in the program as well, and then we all give them the recognition when they have achieved, then that goes to the upward spiral where they don't have to rely on the social media, either give them the superficial encouragement or they put them into comparison with those peer pressures.
It's having that self-confidence, right? Or having that decision-making ability. I think that's really important. I remember when we started speaking about some of my personal stuff, right? I have a financial planning background, and I come into a country where it's very different. The credit score is a big deal here, right? And I've got to learn that process. And, I come from a family where we want to invest in property, but learning through conversation with the two of you that's one method, but there's very many other options, right? And starting small and scaling is something that's also very important. So it's one of the things that maybe I think for my kids, when they finish studying, they're going to get into the workforce. Mm-hmm. What are some of the simple disciplines that we should look at to have control of our money? I mean, for example, I encourage I will be encouraging my family, my kids, to save 20% of what they earn, right? That's what I've done. That's what I was brought up to do. I listened to someone say, save 50% and you can retire, 20 years earlier. I don't know if I may have started a bit late, but what are some of those little disciplines that when we have our young adults going to work, starting as a part-time job or going in a full-time job, what is some of the advice that you could share for a parent to try and instill so they can break those habits? Because I also saw a study from Pew Research was showing that these young adults know that they're on their phones too much. It's not that they don't know, they hold each other accountable. So what are the things that we can instill as parents to say, hey, well, think about how you can manage yourself better. Be proactive. I'll be curious to hear what are some tips or what advice would you give us to give those young adults?
Here's something I recently found interesting. This is up to debate and up to discussing as well. human as a creature of rational thinking, we want to gain control of everything.
Mm.
That's by nature. Where investment is a different animal, where it's not subject to your control. Where is recession coming, how the market evolve is not up to our control.
Mm.
So my advice to parents and young adults is control your spending habit, control your saving habit. This is where you can control how much percentage, like rightly you said, 20%, 10%, depends on what level of burden you have, what level of earning power you have. But once you have the money into the market, lose the control. Either let the market riding through or let a professional to help you manage it. And that's where you're supposed to focus on your career instead of how the money is developed or diversified. Because to me, cryptocurrency going to consume a lot of your time and you will never figure out what's going on behind the scene. It's not regulated at all. Now, individual market, everybody has their own opinion. Internet is a platform, everybody's opinion got valued, but not necessarily appreciated. So in order for you, if you have aspiration to become a financial professional, you're welcome to understand more and then even going to Wall Street. But if you're not, you have a career path, I would suggest you focus on that instead of the money that you invested.
I love that you say use a professional. Mo, you wanted to share your insights on that or some thought?
Yes, I can share some tips that I've been using. So first of all, I think it's good to, there's a Chinese old saying that whenever if you want to really reach a wealthy state, then first two things that you need to do, you need to control your budget, and then you need to think about earning more, right? Two things. So starting from the control your budget. So when I first started working, I didn't have the habit of managing my own bills for budgeting, right? So if I can go through my monthly spending and go through one item by items, actually you'd be finding a lot actually you are spending, but you're not using it. For example, some people are using 3 subscriptions like a Hulu, Disney, and Amazon, right? You're paying for 3, but how many are we really watching? Can we get rid of those 2? If we can save $20 or $30 a month, that accumulates in a 20-year span. That's a lot of money. Another thing is that coming from my engineering background, I know from an energy reserve point of view, actually from an air conditioning point of view, sometimes we turn it down too low, even though we're away. Actually, there are smart technologies that you can use, like a smart thermostat. You can manage it when you are away, turn up the air conditioner, and when you're at home, turn it down. So that conserves energy. That's from a budgeting point of view, but also from a saving point of view, just leveraging some good tools that we can use automatically saves for you and invest for you. Also, like Tony mentioned, leveraging some professional help, some professional guidance. That's where I actually benefited a lot.
Yeah, I think in summary, what Motion says, complementing to what I said, is for something has a simple answer, let's try to automate it so that we don't think about it, right? And then using it right away. But anything that is complex, that is outside of our control, we should loosen up to it. Not a professional to own it, or not an investment principle to follow, so that you don't get interfere into the middle where you have no control anyway.
Absolutely. I really appreciate both of your insights on that and knowing, okay, what can we control and what can we not control, right? That locus of control and focusing on those things that we can. In terms of client success stories or breakthroughs that you've seen in clients, could you share maybe something from a young adult that has been a light bulb moment or a breakthrough story in your eyes? Tony, you can start first, and then Moshan.
Right. I have a story about 5 years ago. When I was first building this business, I travel a lot, sometimes to a remote location where we know nobody. So we actually was lucky. I met a professor in one of the events, and he invited me to go to his local community, just do a seminar with them. So I wasn't expecting a lot. I just go. And after the event, I end up having 10, 15 appointments, one after another. So apparently they all have concerns, they all have doubts, and they wanted to have professional opinion. And there was one client I got on that day. She's actually economic professor in University of West Virginia. So I got curious. She knows more economy than me at that time. I was very junior in my profession, and then I know the product side of the things more, but she knows overall economy. He has more academic background. And the leap of faith he had on me has a huge impact on my self-confidence. So later on, we become good friends. And I become friends with her family. They have 3 kids, wonderful kids. Every time I get there, I try to visit them. So they become my repeated customer, having more to me and even consulting me when they try to buy a new home and then how to invest the rest of the money they saved. So that brought me thinking that, by the way, her husband is also achieved a doctor in local, focus on radiology profession. What brought me thinking is that the knowledge is something we all can learn in academic setting or social media or internet, where now it's almost free for access to, for example, our podcast. But how do we apply to it is a challenge, not just for everyday people, not just for younger people, but also for achieved professionals like professors as well. So I think there's a room for every profession to dig deeper. How do we serve people in a more intellectual, stimulated way, where have a conversation, one may lead to another, but not to focus on the transaction. So to some extent, I have given their professional opinion, plus through conversation, we start building trust between 2 individual persons, and then spanning to a family relationship. And they in turn also give me the benefit of the early business encouragement. They also give me referral business as well. So that's something become one of the story I remember from early on in the business, but it has continuously evolved to be even bigger story.
Yeah, for me, actually, the best story is probably to tell my own story. I came into the industry without any knowledge about how to manage my personal finance. And later on, I realized one of the friends who used to actually debate a lot with me actually started to change all of a sudden, have able to observe different perspectives, and also were able to give some suggestions that actually peacefully. So, and I become curious. And I realized that that friend has been training with Tony, has been consulting and doing the coaching. So then I realized, okay, that's an opportunity for me to regrow again. And over the years, actually, one of the mentality of how do we really effectively forming a habit is actually to have the intention to help others form that habit. For example, if somebody want to quit smoking, then find somebody that he or she can help to quit smoking. In that process, actually, I'd be able to quit smoking or quit drinking better. Same principles applies to personal finance. If you really want to be good at personal finance, find somebody who you think that needs that knowledge and start helping them. Then you yourself be able to do it better. I was actually in the process of learning, but have the mentality, okay, I see people out there that actually needs this information and knowledge, which I can help. And during that process, I can remember this knowledge is better. And I am able to actually apply in my personal finance as an example to show people that this is really working. So that has been a breakthrough over the years. Although we talk of breakthrough, it seems like overnight, but actually a lot of the breakthrough actually is from over time when you don't see anything happening. And then all of a sudden there's breakthrough. Breakthrough doesn't happen overnight.
I love this, like teachable moments. Say like the best learners are teachers, and what you're sharing there, I wrote it down. I think it's a great advice. You want help with personal finance? You want to go help someone with theirs, and together you're learning, right? And we feed off each other.
Yeah.
You guys left some good tips. I love that tip about managing your bills, Hulu, YouTube, Amazon, etc. Right? And doing that activity. So I'm just curious, before we close out our session, if you could give us another financial tip, are there tools, are there apps that you would suggest? What would help us to maybe just stay on top of some of these things? Do you maybe have one or two more tips each, and then we'll close out our interview? These are great ideas.
I can start off with some tips, and Tony can add on to with more concepts and principles. So for some of the tips for young professionals, when they got out of school and they start to start building their habits, actually they are because of they haven't really had the history of credit, so they can start using some credit cards, which is called prepaid credit cards. Right. So you pay like $200 in, and then you use it, and then you start to build up your credits. Also, monitoring your credits is important. There's an app called Credit Karma that you can actually use and monitor your credit score. Actually, you can even simulate how for certain activities that you do, how would it impact your credit scores. Also, there's another one for bill management, and also to have an overview of your total asset. There's something called a Mint, mint.com. If you sign up there, it's free. You can monitor all your accounts, and you see all the activities, and you can do your budgeting up there.
Fantastic. Thanks. Tony, any last thoughts from you?
Yeah, that's really some practical tools. So I'm going to share two concepts. What I over the last 80 years, I kind of summarize it, and I keep refining it. So most recently, I come to the conclusion that when the younger people making a decision, especially when they try to do something for long term, they will think about something can be used multiple times or in multiple ways. Basically, flexibility is one of the things that you think about. And for example, the reason people get rid of the digital camera and the pager, all those things using a smartphone is integration, right? Integration gives you the convenience of trying to attack every aspect, even though they may not perform the best quality if you compare single item wise. So in the industry, there are tools considered as structured tools where they can take care of your saving, your tax planning, your life insurance, and estate plan, all those things. You may not use that right away, but think about that ahead of time. It will be benefit you, because as you're younger, you tend to get it cheaper. So that's one aspect to it. Try to integrate as much as possible while maintaining flexibility. The second thing is, think about what that tools gives you, shapes your behavior, shapes your personality. For example, whatever you buy, whatever you use, shapes your brain as you continue to use it. As you have a good habit, you become better in terms of behavior. You form a bad habit, then you're going the other way around, and then every day compounds each other. So I would challenge the younger people to ask yourself, does this tool I own gives me the dopamine, and also sometimes gives me, give me 1 second, and sometimes gives you cortisol level raised, right? Is that worth owning the product? So just like the sugar itself is not a problem, but the sugar spiking in our blood, that's the problem. So the same thing, if the tool gives you the dopamine at spiking, then that means it gives you more risk-taking route. It pushes you go take more risk, which I think in financial, you should not be taking too much risk than necessary, right? You have a financial goal, write it down. As long as you achieve the goal, don't take any unnecessary risk. If you buy a home just to buy a home, you don't shorten the period you're saving for buying a home, just saving for the down payment. So that's something I challenge every younger people to do. Keep challenging yourself, ask the question, what does this tool gives me everyday feeling? Am I feeling comfortable? Am I feeling safe and secure? Am I suddenly too happy, suddenly too sad? And that's something I would avoid by all means.
That is so good, Tony. Thank you so much for sharing all these tips, and Moshan as well. So many good principles that we unpacked here today and advice for our listeners. I have no doubt that this was very beneficial, including for myself and Neville. So thank you for all of that. Really integrating as much as possible with maintaining flexibility. That really stood out to me, as well as looking at my own behaviors and how I can change them so that it is productive and will serve me well for in the future as I want to take command of my future. So thank you. And for anyone that wants to contact you guys and learn more about Apex Family Wealth, how can they connect with you? On what platforms would you like them to go to? Can you share that?
Yeah, we have a web front. It's called apexlearn.org. It's a nonprofit organization. That's the entry point for everybody trying to know more about how education can change their behavior and decision making, especially on finance. And we're trying to build a podcast like you guys. So one day I will interview Neville as well to kind of give 2 cents on fellow investors, how he can become a successful entrepreneur in his home country and again in America. So this is where we kind of, as engineer background, we don't spend enough time on marketing, but that's something we can all learn and grow. That's why I call this is our breakthrough, to not be camera shy as we already are, and talk more with people and then interchange information more so we can both learn.
And you taught us we can automate the simple things, right? We can automate.
Exactly.
Exactly. Well, I'll put that link down below so that listeners can go to that website to get in contact with both of you. And thank you again for being on the podcast. Thank you for those that are listening. If you'd like to connect with Dale Carnegie on social media, you can find us on Instagram at Dale Carnegie East NC. And thank you, Neville, for being a wonderful co-host. And we will see you guys on the next episode. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
so much.
Have a good day.
Awesome.